All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this evening. My name is Jamie Keynes. I'm the Director of Student Services at the IIRP. I would like to just go over a few housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to Craig Adamson, our Provost. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar. So to pose a question, just wiggle your mouse a little bit, and there's a chat option that will come up at the bottom of the screen. Click the chat feature and you can type right into the panelists, and I'll pop in every 15 minutes or so to share those questions with Craig and Liesbet. If you have any questions, send them to me and I'll be monitoring the chat feature throughout the call. So thank you for joining. Craig?
Good evening. My name is Craig Adamson. I'm the Provost here at the International Institute for Restorative Practices. I've been with the IIRP, the consortium of organizations, for over 20 years. We didn't call it restorative practices in the very beginning, but we've evolved into it. I'm happy to be here with you tonight, and I'm happy to be here with Liesbet Bickett, who is one of our current matriculated students in the graduate program. So what we thought that it would be helpful is for those of you who are online who are just maybe starting their journey in the graduate program or in the certificate program, that they wanted to hear a little bit more from another student perspective about how restorative practices and maybe the IIRP has had some impact on her learning journey. And we do these webinars from time to time, and we meet with different students, and we are recording today's session so that we can see it at a future time, or for those folks who weren't able to join us today, that they can go back and take a look at the recording as well. So welcome, Liesbet. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks. Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you just fill folks in a little bit about your background and maybe how you came to find us here at the IIRP.
Okay. So for about 8 years, I guess about 8 or 9 years, I've been a coach and working with people using nonviolent communication to help build relationships, and it was a few years ago actually that I was at Alcatraz, and after Alcatraz is I think hopefully most people know, it's a famous former prison, and you can go and tour it now. It's an island off of San Francisco, and at the end of the tour they have a whole room devoted to restorative justice. And I went in there and was reading about it, and I read some case examples that they had, and I read that and it just struck me. This is the way I want it to be. This is the way I want the world to work. This is the way I want our justice system to work. It felt so right to me. It's really what, in so many ways, just captured the way I was wanting our systems to be working. And so I immediately got on the computer and started looking for trainings and information. And at that time, I wasn't able to find very much. But a few years ago, I decided I wanted to go back to school and get my master's, mainly so that I could move, I guess, further in my career and just also deepen the learning that I was doing. And I really, really wanted to do something along the lines of this restorative justice. And so I started looking again, and eventually through a lot of different avenues, that's how I found the IIRP. And I was so excited because it was really the one place where I saw everything coming together that I was looking for. And it's just been amazing, transformative, so wonderful. Ever since I started with you guys, it's really given my life the direction that I want it to have.
I think this has got to be the first for us at IIRP that Alcatraz I can thank for making a referral to the graduate program. So I hadn't heard that before. So thanks. Well, tell us a little. Some of the feedback that I get from students that's helpful is the skills, the competencies that they're learning in classes and through our blended program of both online and face-to-face professional development events is that they're practical. And the next day, they can implement, start to try out in their workplace, whatever that may be. I mean, there's a large majority that are educators that are in the graduate school, but there's youth serving agencies, there's outdoor education, there's some attorneys and other academics and things of that sort from other fields. You also bring up restorative justice as a perspective, and that's really the roots of restorative practices, not just being a response to harm, but being more of the proactive side, like you said, about building relationship. So tell us a little bit about your experience with some of your learning and how that connects to, you know, your life, your professional life, and that mindset that you approach your work with.
Yeah, one of the things is that just on a daily basis, literally every single day that I do any of my schoolwork, I learn something that gives me the terminology and the science that speaks to what I've known and what I felt inside of me is the way that I want people to be interacting, and the way that I want, the way that I think the world would make more sense. And so it's just really beautiful to see what I know inside and what I see in the world around me when I watch people interacting, what I see works and what I see doesn't work, to actually be reading research about it that explains it, that gives me a science base so that when I go and talk to somebody about power and how power works and how different modes of power and how they affect people and how to engage people, I actually have the science to back what I've been witnessing really all along. And I really appreciate that. I think that it gives me a lot more confidence when I'm talking to people about, like, you know, how to manage power in an organization or even in a relationship, and how power comes into play, or like shame, you know, how shame comes into play in a situation and the effect that it can have on people and relationships, that I feel more confident talking about it, and I feel more confident approaching situations and helping people get clarity, because on a daily basis I'm reading research and I'm reading case studies that explain the dynamics of what I'm seeing. And I feel more credible also because of the base that I'm getting.
That's great. Thanks. We have also some folks joining us worldwide. We have some international students, and I know for me, I used to teach RP 623, which was kind of the world perspective on restorative justice. And I think it was one course we had about 15 folks in our online learning community, and I think there was 11 different countries represented. I mean, it was such a rich conversation, and so it's just not within a U.S. context when we're talking about relationship and what that looks like, but it's also an international context. And I also think, and I don't know if you've had this experience yet, but we have several faculty members that we've tried to really create some very unique perspectives too, from Fernanda, who's from Recife, Brazil. I think you're with Frida, who's a South African, originally a school counselor, run a school program. So, I think that there's some diversity, and outside of diversity within the U.S. context, it's diversity worldwide. So, but before you move into that question, Jamie came on, so that means that there's a question.
Actually, there's two questions, but I wanted to just speak to the international population. I put a question out for to find out where people are calling in from, and I just thought it would be interesting to share that we do have Fernanda on the call as a participant today, so she's calling in from Brazil. We have an attendee from Romania, and we have several from Michigan, Oregon, Texas, Washington, Maryland, and California. So welcome, everyone. And just to put a little perspective, Craig is currently in Vermont. I am in Pennsylvania, and Liesbet is calling in from California. So you can see the diversity. Oh, and Costa Rica and New Jersey just popped up as well. So welcome, everyone. There were two questions that popped up. The one is, Craig, this one's going to be for you. Is there anywhere that I can get information about the power that you just shared? So when you were talking about power, is there do you have a reference point?
I think that was Liesbet was talking a little bit about the research.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Liesbet, what were you drawing from there?
Well, really some of the basics of restorative practices, looking at how we use power, the social discipline window, and so I would refer people to Defining Restorative, which is on the website, which really talks about power, control, and support, and the restorative model of power, which is creating systems of power where we have high expectations and high control, but we also have high support, where we're asking people, what is it that you need in order to operate at your very best, and making sure that people have the support that they need in order to meet those expectations, and giving them opportunities to engage in decisions that are being made and that are affecting them. So that, I mean, it's just so basic, and that Defining Restorative, I think, is such a great resource for the basics of restorative practices and the philosophy that's coming into it.
Yeah, great. And I would just add to that, that's perfect, the social discipline window. Also in that article that Liesbet is referencing is also Fair Process, which is a Harvard Business Review article that talks a lot about institutional, or for that's a for-profit area company that uses a story about how to engage, explain, and create expectation clarity through this process called Fair Process. A lot of where the social discipline came from was Glasser's work. For those of you who know psychology theory, Glasser at one point was control theory, and then at a later date changed it to choice theory. Control theory and choice theory in there. So that's really helpful. So, and I think Fernanda's posting some things on the comments as well. So from Maxwell. So there's quite a bit out there. If you're interested, this can become contagious.
True.
Once you start reading and getting into it, I think you'll really love it. So thanks.
And I just posted the link for Defining Restorative in the chat feature. It's available on our website too, but you can link right from the chat feature. The other question is, can you speak to the intersection between restorative practices and social justice?
You want that?
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure. Why don't you give the student perspective, and I'm happy to share.
Okay. I guess for me, it's the intersection. It's just this perfect intersection, because when I think of social justice, I think of how do we create systems and relationships where everybody has an opportunity, has access to resources, and has an opportunity to show up as their best self, and to be heard, and to engage in the world that's affecting them, and which isn't always about equality, because people are coming into any environment from a different background and different privileges. And restorative practices is really all about creating spaces where people can engage, where they are safe, and can engage with how the world is affecting them, where they can be heard, and where they can really have their needs acknowledged. And we don't always get all of our needs met, but to actually have them be acknowledged that they matter, and to work collaboratively. It's kind of all about helping people engage in a really effective way to support each other. So I think the intersection is like, it's a parallel path to me. That's my perspective.
And I think for me, I think that social justice proponents and perspectives really raise the good questions. It's kind of the what. I think the intersection is for restorative practices is the how. So how do we have those conversations? How do we get in the same space and take some of those risks? And I think restorative practices can provide that platform in order to have those conversations. There's some amazing work being done right now in Detroit. Henry McClendon is very much focused on a community health model. And when you think of restorative practices from a community health model and social justice, it's very much in line with the work that he's doing, pulling together community and police and religious organizations and several other nonprofits in the area. So actually, that's going to be quite a shameless plug here. That's going to be one of our main focal points in the Detroit conference coming up this October. It's been an area that we really wanted to highlight and offer the opportunity for many speakers. So at the end of October this year at the conference, there's going to be some amazing speakers. We had over 185 presentations for only about 80 spots for the conference. So there's an overwhelming amount of folks who want to speak to this topic. And I think it needs to be developed. So that intersection point, it's early on. So it really needs your voice as well as far as what that look like in the future. All right. So,
I just wanted to say really quickly, Craig, to speak to that international piece that you brought up before that. Just a really great example. One of the classes that I was in, we had a woman from Holland, and this was at a time when the whole refugee crisis was happening, and America was kind of shutting its doors to refugees, and the Dutch took in a lot of refugees during that time, and she was actually, her job was how to help these refugees get integrated into their communities. And so that was just a perfect example of what a blessing it is to have people from all over the world participating in these programs, and not only getting perspectives of hearing what other countries and policies, what else is happening, but even like in the moment, live stuff that's happening in our culture and how it's being responded to by different countries, by different organizations. I think it's really wonderful to have that vast perspective.
That's helpful too, and I see some of the questions popping up here too, Jamie. So maybe I'll be able to respond. So I think that one of the things I'll speak to is how to respond to different issues or different programs or different perspectives, different disciplines. So at one point, restorative practices was described as transdisciplinary. But what does that really mean? I think, this is Craig's opinion, so anytime that you're entering a relationship with someone or entering into community with somebody, restorative practices has an impact on how to go about that and how to be intentional about doing that. So from basic questions to circle processes, removing barriers, to the most difficult situations of using restorative conferencing in the wake of a crime, where people have really been harmed. So I think that when you're thinking about how restorative can be implemented in different programs, it's not just about the tools, it's more about the mindset. So it's how can we engage and create better relationships, stronger bonds in order to do what we're doing, whether that's organizational management, organizational change. I was just in Australia working with youth off the streets, and they were doing a whole leadership model. They're doing some wonderful work with kids, but they really wanted to dedicate themselves to doing some work as leaders together. So there's many experiences that folks can have from multiple different disciplines in regards to restorative practices. Jamie?
Yep. So, Liesbet, this is a great question for you. We were talking about this a little bit before we started the call. In what ways is restorative justice being applied to youth programs that involve interaction with the outdoors? How can those practices be implemented into a program that is not necessarily related to or reliant upon activity outdoors?
Okay, yeah, so I do manage a therapeutic mentoring program. We worked with highest need youth in our area, and we pair them up with one-on-one mentors. And our model does involve getting them outside. We take them climbing and mountain biking and all kinds of stuff. So we do have that. And so in what ways, again, I guess it just, for me, this really speaks to what Craig was talking about. It's really that mindset of no matter what it is, what we're doing is creating opportunities for the people that we're working with to engage in the world and to experience themselves in a different way in the world. So whether that is outside or whether it isn't outside, and I don't know if I'm really answering the question. Let's see. I don't know.
Can I
You
help?
want to give me some? Yeah, give me some direction.
No, I think you're right on the right track. I mean, so for us, there's IIRP, and then we have our model programs called Community Service Foundation and Bucksmont Academy. So we use it in our foster homes with circles when kids come home from school. We use it in all of our day treatment programs. It could be a circle that we're doing in regards to framing a lesson, on a story that's from homework that kids are sitting down to do. So it's just that consistency. It's about building bonds. It can be used in outdoor activities. It doesn't have to be. It could be indoor without outdoor activities. So there's multiple different uses to that. And if you're looking within school programs, I would recommend the basic restorative practices. Professional development is a good place to start. All right.
Yeah, and I'll just add, kind of in that was the social emotional learning. I took a class. One of the classes was on social emotional learning, and really kind of went in to all of this also. That was, for me, that was just so enlightening, an amazing class that just really educates why restorative practices works and how it's impacting kids and how it can be used to impact kids.
So I wanted to drill into a little bit of the experience that you're having right now. You're in adversity and trauma as a course. So that's typically, we've gotten some feedback over the years, and it was actually part of my doctoral work was around the IIRP. And one of the things that popped up is one of the major experiences that students had was in the course that you're in right now, Liesbet. So, and it was around the idea of compassionate witnessing and self-awareness and things of that sort. You tell us a little bit about what that, just currently today, you're in the thick of it. What this course is. It's a 500 level course. It's kind of typically at the beginning of the trajectory of folks' learning journey in the graduate program. What has been your experience here?
With the adversity and trauma class?
Yes.
Yeah. It's really great. It's different from some of the other classes because we do have a weekly Zoom session. So every week we're meeting together as a group, and we are engaging in compassionate witnessing. So every week I'm in a small group with Frida, the instructor, and we have one person who's facilitating and one person who is telling a story, and then a few people who are witnesses, and we're actually engaging in the process of compassionate witnessing. And so that's different because most of the other classes most of the work is done online through writing and reading and with just the occasional check-in with the instructor. It's definitely a challenging class. It's one of the more challenging classes. I think Frida is she really challenges the students, which is fabulous. And I'm learning a lot, engaging with the material, and it's just very interactive. So for me, it's just really right in. Compassionate witnessing is really using nonviolent communication. It's kind of really key to what it is that I do. And I'm looking at how I'm going to be using it. I'm actually planning on using the process in my next mentor training that I'm having in a couple days, and using compassionate witnessing to help the mentors, to help train them and help them work together to learn, how to respond to situations that come up with their kids. So, I mean, that's the other thing that I think is really awesome about every class that I've taken, and this one too, is that I'm in a field that's maybe different than, it's not the educational field, and but everything that I'm learning is really applicable to, to the area that I'm studying, into so many aspects of my life, and not just professional. And I've always found that my instructors are really wonderful in helping me take what I'm learning and really look at how can I use this tomorrow with what it is that I'm doing and trying to do at work and in other areas.
That's great. Some of the things that I think that we're also trying to do here is trying to bring other perspectives. So when, like you were talking about, Frida and her specialty, working with from a trauma-informed perspective. But we also have some faculty. I mentioned Fernanda, who's online, who posted some pieces, is doing some wonderful work in the area of restorative justice, and has worked in, most recently, and done some research in domestic abuse. Miguel Teo is from Costa Rica. He's also a professor with us here at the graduate school. He's brought in some folks from Costa Rica where judges are coming off out from beyond their table and sitting down and running circles and doing conferences. To hear judges that are running restorative conferences blew me away. And Miguel has just had a lot of work, both the criminal justice and the educational community in Latin America. Where do you think, I mean, as Liesbet, you were talking about, as a professional, it's pushing me in areas that I didn't think that I was going to be pushed towards. I mean, what does it mean in undergraduate education, and there's other people online here that are thinking about it now. I mean, to what degree are you pushed in areas that you didn't think, that you're doing things that you didn't even sign up for as far as an education? What's that online dialogue? You mentioned that there's some dialogue with the other students, and there was the Holland experience. I mean, so what is that learning community like for you as a student is really the question.
Well, it's challenging. It's really been great to be challenged to work consistently and to be learning consistently, to be writing, to really be challenged to synthesize my thoughts into something concise and meaningful. And I say seriously, I think that that's just a super, super important skill. And it's not always easy. And I appreciate actually how much writing, there is a lot of reading and a lot of writing, and the primary way of interacting is through writing. Writing about the assignments, writing about the interactions that we're having, responding to other students by reading what they've written and then writing to them. And it's actually this really great process, because I do have to take everything and kind of synthesize it, decide what's meaningful to me, and then present it in a way that other people can understand it and that may be meaningful to them, and really professionally. And that's just such an important skill. So I guess that's an area that maybe is surprising, that I didn't think about how wonderful that was going to be, and how challenging that would be. And one of the classes actually that I took, one of the first classes that I took, which I highly recommend, was the action research class. And what I did in that class was really I looked at myself and looked at, am I living a life that is in alignment with restorative practices? Am I using restorative practices to kind of look at how I'm approaching, how I prepare for presentations, how I study, how I manage my time? And that was something I really didn't expect, and I really helped me gain discipline and kind of get more mindful about what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Go ahead, Jamie. I could keep going, so it's good that you're popping up asking the questions.
No problem. I have two more for you. I am a social worker on a child study team in middle school setting. I want to find small ways to integrate restorative justice practices in my work with students, also to remove the myth that restorative justice practices is different from discipline.
So I would say, so I'll take that one first, Liesbet, if you want. So this comes up quite a bit. So I think I shared a little bit about teaching a course right now. So John Bailey, who's the president of IIRP, and I visit Columbia Teachers College and teach a course on conflict resolution. And this conversation has been, we do it in summer, so we're in the midst of it right now. And this question comes up often about, is it discipline? Is it not discipline? How do I embed pieces of it sometimes without people knowing that it's being embedded, so we can kind of sneak it in? I would say, again, it's not just a procedure or process, or sometimes people want a curriculum. Hand me the curriculum and I'll just implement it. Restorative practices is not that. And we always talk about the 80-20 rule, that it's about 80% of what you're doing is the proactive piece of restorative practices and building relationship, and hopefully only 20, if not less, is about the responsive side. If you're doing the proactive side and you get to the responsive side, people already know about circles and know how to respond, and that's kind of ingrained in your culture. So if you're asking me, how can you do some of the minimum as far as discipline, I would say running circles. If you have teachers that are starting to deal with discipline issues on their own within the classroom as a classroom community, that's going to reduce some of the referrals to the office. That's going to allow folks to be more responsible for classes and the student interactions. And I would say it's not a discipline problem. It's probably more of a relationship problem. So, you can start to, think about what that looks like. And I'd be happy to follow up and have a more thorough conversation offline. If you want to follow up, maybe we'll put our content.
Thank you. And Craig, I'm going to share both yours and my contact information in the chat feature. So if anyone that's on the call does have questions, feel free to reach out to either Craig or myself. I have been sharing links, as Craig's mentioning, different topics. So there's a link in the chat feature for the Detroit conference. There's a link in the chat feature for the basic restorative practices. So you can scroll through those as well. The other question that came up was, how then does restorative practices connect with other social emotional trainings like Yale's Ruler program?
Yale's Ruler program? I don't see. I'm not familiar with Yale's Ruler program. Our program connects, so our partners are Castle from Socialemotional perspective. Castle is very much an educational focus that have created empirical research around building social emotional learning programs within schools. And we've done some work actually as a visiting faculty. John Cohen, who's been a leader in research and educational capacities, he's out of New York, has joined us from an SEL perspective. But if you're asking me, there are parallel processes, social emotional learning and restorative practices. It's really hard to be a facilitator engaging in relationship and not start to dive into the social emotional learning perspectives.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more. I want to go to school to be a family counselor. Is there a restorative justice practice classes or certification class that I can take instead of going the community college route for general education? Help or guidance, please.
So I'm assuming you're thinking undergrad. So this is just a graduate program right now. So we don't have, I'll use it's not gen ed program. It's a very specific 30 credit master's degree. So if you're thinking about gen ed as far as other programs for a graduate program for family counseling, we don't offer gen ed track. This is a very niche specific type of program that's just focused on restorative practices. So sorry, I can't help you there for the gen ed track of things. So, okay. So we'll just, Liesbet and I will just keep going on with some of the other questions that we have and that have come up in past webinars. So tell us specifically, Liesbet, about very specific skills and competencies that you think you've developed while in the program or that have pushed you to develop more while you've been here in the program.
Okay, so first of all, super specific skills that have been extremely helpful is around facilitation. Facilitating circles, facilitating small group circles, I guess, 3-4 people, but just really all around how to facilitate groups of people in a way that maximizes their engagement and I believe in a way that makes the best learning environment possible, not only for, I guess, when I look at facilitating groups, I'm wanting to go in not only to create a learning environment for them, but to create a learning environment for me also, because I'm the facilitator and I want to be learning about the people that I'm working with. And I'm constantly wanting to get feedback from them that teaches me how I can further facilitate them and their learning and their journey. So that's just huge. And it's effective on so many levels. Also specifically, restoring from harm, the restorative questions are so simple and they're incredibly powerful and applicable. I hand them out to my family. I talk about it with my family. I talk about it with my friends, talk about it with people that I work. I use these questions in a lot of different kind of environments, and I've learned how to use them in different kind of environments and how to modify them in order to restore relationships and when harm happens and how to restore the harm. So super, very specific, very powerful and actually quite simple. But then there's a lot of unlearning, I think, that has to be done. And so that's another, area where, like, specifically with restoring harm, I think that part of the restorative questions involves an unlearning process that I've been taken through, and I've been given specific tools to help other people unlearn, the way they used to approach a situation and learn a new way. And then also really specific tools around social emotional learning, around interpreting behavior and responding to behavior. And I've gotten specific practice with how to interpret behavior, how to respond to behavior, how to really look at what kind of deeper look at the actions and what might be going on and what that person might be needing. So again, I've been given some really specific tools for that. So those are a few and there's more, there's a lot, but those are a few of the really big ones.
Great. Jamie?
Yep, we have a couple questions that popped up around the graduate education, so I'm going to try to put a few of them together. The difference between the Master of Science degree and the certificate program, the ratio between online courses and contact courses, will there be a post-master's program, and the affordability piece came up. We have a teacher who is looking to begin education, but the school that she works at is low income, and she's concerned about the trainings and the affordability piece.
So do you want to answer some of them, Jamie, because they're yours? Save the post-MA program for me.
I can definitely do that. So the graduate certificate is 4 courses for a total of 12 credits. There are 2 required courses and 2 elective courses. The Master of Science degree is 10 courses and 30 credits, 4 required, 6 electives. So in both programs, you have the opportunity to really customize your plan of study, and I can help you do that. As far as in-person experience, I did post a link for the Basic Restorative Practices 4-day professional development event. That is the only required in-person experience for you to complete either the degree or the certificate. There are other opportunities for face-to-face experiences, like the conference in Detroit in October. We offer a restorative leadership development course that has a 2-day component. We offer a symposium every other year. We will have that in Bethlehem in July of 2019, and then again in 2021, and so on. And that'll be between a 2- and 3-day in-person experience. And we offer aggression replacement training as an elective course. Again, that's a 2-day experience. But it's really how much we're able to travel to attend those events. And we offer those in-person experiences in a way that if you're coming from a distance to Pennsylvania, you can attend 4 or 5 of them in one trip, return home, and then take the online components of the courses in future terms when they're offered. So it's very customizable to your availability to be in person, your interest in the courses. And again, that's something I can help you with. And with respect to the affordability, I'm really, really excited. We redesigned our entire tuition structure beginning June 1st. We now offer something called transparent tuition, and we offer a 0 interest payment plan. So the transparent tuition provides our matriculated students an 8% discount on their courses throughout the duration of their studies. So our tuition is $1,761 a course. For matriculated students, that is automatically reduced to $1,614 a course. And again, that is through the duration of your studies. So if our tuition numbers change at any time over the next year, 2 years, or 3 years, your tuition will not increase. So we are committing to you that is the price that you will pay. For students who would like to break that down over time, the $1,600 is something that's not affordable at any given time. We offer a payment plan. It is 0 interest. It's $167 a month over 39 months for the certificate students and over 96 months for our degree students. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help you from a financial standpoint. And again, that's something I can help you with. So feel free to contact me. I put my contact information in the Q&A.
And then as far as a program for post-masters, the faculty are working pretty hard right now thinking about what those next steps are. one of the issues that we have overall as a field of study is that restorative practices is really early on in its development and its academic literature, research, so forth. So one of the thoughts that IRP has is let's create opportunities for students to be able to publish their own work. So we're in the midst of creating a thesis track, which will be an additional 12 credits over and above the 30 credit masters. And the idea is really the 30 credit is the more the practitioner degree, and then you add on the 12 credits, which takes you to the thesis track. And then we're thinking 2021, 2022 to launch our first doctoral program cohort. So we're in the planning stages. It's part of our strategic plan right now. We're trying to look at proposals and the resources needed to be able to launch those programs, but our heads are into it right now. So thanks for that question.
Another question came up. Do you have some experience with training prosecutors or judges in relation with cases that they refer for restorative justice circles between offender and victim? This question's coming from Curacao. The Women's Center is preparing for a seminar with a judge from a youth restorative justice program from Costa Rica.
Yeah, if I had Miguel on here, I'd have him speak to it. So as far as IIRP as a graduate school, before it was called the IIRP Graduate School, it was called Real Justice, late 90s. And all of our work was done in criminal justice. So it was all judges and attorneys and police. We did quite a bit of police work. So a lot of our original experiences were in the criminal justice system. So experience training judges and attorneys and what the process is, absolutely. We would probably talk more about the formal restorative conferencing, which is a little bit different in process than an actual circle, but that's a technicality. So yes, and we're not the only ones doing that. There's plenty of people that are doing that work. So Kate Pranis is very well known for doing that work as well.
All right, 2 more questions. The one I'll take because it's a real easy one. It's about the accreditation for our program. We are accredited by Middle States Commission on Higher Education. So I will send the link from our website through the chat feature so you can read more about that. Craig, what are the most effective practices for interacting with youth in rural areas who have committed minor nonviolent crimes?
Okay. I think that the question really is what happened, who's been harmed, how they've been harmed, and what's going to make that better. So from nonviolent to lower level offenses to significant offenses, the questions are really the same. So it just may mean the level of harm might be less. So that could be anything from a circle, from those stakeholders that have been impacted. And when I say stakeholders, what makes it different than, let's say, a mediation is that I would include parents. I would include other people who might have been impacted by whatever that minor crime is in a dialogue around what happened, who was harmed, how are they harmed, and what's going to make that right. And so we have some very specific, we call it the Waga scripted model that came from Australia, Terry O'Connell, who I just had the opportunity in Australia to visit, which was wonderful, created a lot of that years ago. Hundreds and thousands of conferences have happened since that time. So pretty successful and, test-driven, over time. So no other questions? Okay. So I'm just taking a look at the time. We only have about 10 minutes left. So I think that many students come, and this has come up in some of their narratives, Liesbet, it's just, so it's one thing to come get a master's degree, but typically it's about making a difference in the world, no matter where that is, whether it's, just with maybe as a mother or a father or a family, whatever that might be, to a spiritual leader, to their profession or much broader goals. I mean, Ted Wachtel, who was the founder of IIRP, said, "Hey, we're going to change the world." So that was a pretty big one starting out, and he did it. So how about for you? What's creating a difference in the world mean for you?
For me, creating a difference in the world means creating safe spaces for people to show up authentically and to be able to engage with each other authentically and connect with each other with compassion, and to receive compassion, and to be connected to the world that they depend on for their survival, to be connected in a compassionate, authentic, loving way. And that's really my personal website is sacredconnection.space. And that's because for me, the difference that I make is that I want to be making is creating those safe spaces for people to connect. And the restorative practices, everything that I've learned has really fueled my ability to do that. I have so much more confidence and so many more skills in order to know how to do that. It's just what you said at the very beginning, Craig, is that intersection of social justice and restorative practices. It's the how. I've been given so many hows to create the spaces for people to live in the world the way that I'm hoping that they can live, which is knowing each other, connecting authentically and compassionately.
Great. Well, you are making a difference, in knowing you a little bit. I get to hear some of those stories, and even the pictures in the background that we're looking at, making a difference with kids. So I did see that there was a question. Was that Waga that I said? So sorry I said that so quickly. So the Waga model, Terry O'Connell was originally a police officer in Wagga Wagga, Australia. So yes, so you can look up whether it's the scripted model, IIRP, restorative conferencing, or the Waga model would be appropriate. So sorry about that. Sometimes I get going and I'm using slang. So, okay, Jamie, is there anything else?
Just a couple of thank yous, and if you have any other questions in the last few minutes, please type them in. We did get some feedback from Flint Community Schools. I want you to know that a team of people in the Flint Community Schools are excited as RP trainers, and Kevin Jones did an amazing job helping us. Kevin Jones is one of our licensed trainers. He's also one of our alumni that's doing great work out there.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I would just like to thank you, Liesbet, for joining us tonight. I know that Jamie reached out and invited you recently. I think it's very meaningful, not just to hear from Jamie and I about the graduate school, but to have a active current student here that's really invested in it and have your voice heard. That's really what it's about. So I really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate being here, and to everybody who's listening, I just want to say, whatever you do, whether you kind of do something with the IIRP, I encourage you to look into this more. I just think about the state of America right now, and I think there's a lot of people that are feeling confused and hopeless, and being a part of restorative practices and seeing the what's available out there gives me hope. And I think that we're in a really important time in our country and in our world, and the time for this kind of work has come. And I'm just hoping that everybody who's on this call in some way knows that they can make a difference, and that there's resources out there, and that we really can do this all together. And that's what this is all about. So I'm just so happy that everybody's here and is interested in wanting to do something and be engaged. It gives me hope. So thank you.
Right. And for all of those that are on the line that are thinking about your future academic plans, I mean, you know, really my hope and goal as the provost of the IIRP, you know, I'm really charged with what's that learning trajectory look like, and I want engaging places for people to learn. I want it to be collaborative. I also want it to be, you know, take a critical lens to it as well, and take a look at, you know, this is an emerging social science or an emerging discipline. And so how are we going to help build this together? And I think it's worthwhile. I've dedicated my life professional career to this, and I'm pretty passionate about it. So I'd invite all of you to join us, whether that's for professional development, taking some courses to get this certificate, or thinking about things within the graduate program and future potential thesis and doctoral program. The invitation's there, and I know this is a big decision. And at any time, if you'd like to have some one-on-one time with me as well, I'm happy to make time and space for that to happen. So please feel free to contact me. Jamie?
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Liesbet, for spending the time this afternoon. It was great hearing about the work that you're doing and, you know, how meaningful the education is for you. And I agree. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. You know, it is a huge decision, and I understand that. I support our students. I speak with most of them. I have a support staff that helps. But I completely understand that this is something new that you're looking at possibly bringing into your life. It's going to take time. It's going to take focus. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take financial resources. So reach out and talk to me. I can get you connected with a faculty advisor. If it's not with Craig, we do have other advisors that our matriculated students are connected with, and they're here to support you as well. So there's definitely a tremendous amount of support and encouragement at the IIRP. So thank you so much for joining. Take care, everyone. Bye, Liesbet.
Bye.
Bye, Liesbet. Good seeing you.
Bye. You too.